Hi, this is Ramos Reviews, the channel where I quickly express my thoughts and opinions about all types of movies. Today I'll be looking at 2022's The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves. Going into this film, I had very high hopes because just from the trailer alone, it looked great. From the suit, to the cast, to the shots, to the voice, the choreography, like literally everything was just pointing towards The Batman being a great film. Though I was also worried and skeptical because Batman is my second favorite superhero of all time, and The Dark Knight is my second favorite movie of all time. Yet so many people were saying that this immediately became their new favorite comic book movie. So yeah, the stakes are super high for me as a Batman and a Nolan fan. Especially when you consider the fact that it's been over a decade since we last got a solo Batman film. However, I was a real big fan of what Matt Reeves did with Planet of the Apes films, and many people have told me how good Robert Pattison's performances are, disregarding the Twilight films. So when I saw the second trailer, I stated that I believe that Pattison had the potential to immediately become my new favorite live-action Batman, or even my new favorite Batman movie. Now the question remains, did I guess right? So, once again, I don't have a clear rating system, but I do mainly base my ratings on things like how well it's made, like special effects, directing, acting, how good it's written, like story, characters, and creativity, and how entertaining or enjoyable I found the movie to be overall. Now, if you agree with me, that's great, and if you don't, that's fine. Everyone is open to opinion, and this is just mine. Now, let's get to the breakdown. As fear of the Batman runs rampant throughout Gotham's underworld, cryptic messages from a sadistic murderer named the Riddler surges from the past. As Bruce Wayne solves more riddles, he also unearths the hidden truth of his family's legacy, and must learn to become something else for the people of Gotham. And I'm just gonna start off by saying confidently, Robert Pattison is my favorite live-action Batman portrayal to date, for a few reasons, one of them being the indisputable fact that Robert Pattison's Batman voice is the best live-action Batman voice by far.
I'm vengeance.
Which is great because this film features some of his signature audio diary entries. His voice is deep, serious, calm, understandable, and surprisingly very natural sounding. This can't always be said for Batman's past voice performances.
You never give it to an ordinary citizen. Where is it?
We also get to see a definitive reason as to why Batman is the world's greatest monolingual detective. There's never been as many detective Batman scenes in any live-action Batman. I mean, we got a glimpse of it in The Dark Knight, but in The Batman, we see him as he thoroughly revises evidence and reasonably solves complicated riddles. And with so much good investigating, there aren't as many action sequences as the majority of people probably would have wanted. But to me, the little bit that's shown was enough for me, because the Batman's fight choreography in this film is the fastest and most realistically brutal live-action Batman choreography to date. Plus, without making him seem weak, Batman gets some moments of fatigue during his fights. Throughout the past Batman films, he's taken some strong hits and walked some of them off. Sometimes he would need time to heal afterward before going out as Batman again, but in the Batman, he takes some absolutely severe hits and endures them. During his battles, he gets visibly tired and disoriented, a bit reminiscent of the fight choreography and sequences from Netflix Daredevil, which is very cool to see because Batman has always been this powerful, unstoppable force, and even though he sometimes gets his shit kicked in, this movie reminds he's still just a human being who every night does his best to endure and power through the pain to protect Gotham City, making him, in my eyes, the most badass live-action Batman. Now, the two biggest issues I've heard people have with the Batman are its new take on Bruce Wayne and his supposed forced relationship with Selina. And I personally disagree with both of these negative opinions because believe me, I understand why people were hoping and wanting to see the playboy billionaire that he usually is. But what people need to understand is that at this particular moment in his story, this isn't the same Bruce Wayne that we know and love. He isn't the Bruce that acts like a playboy or businessman because he doesn't realize how helpful Bruce Wayne could be to the citizens of Gotham City. He hasn't really yet acknowledged the privilege that he grew up with. All Bruce can think about is his trauma, not the ones others have felt or are currently feeling. Bruce is not this selfish person who cares only about himself. He's just someone whose closed-minded mentality hasn't been widened yet. Now, as for his relationship with Selina, I'm sorry, but it's not forced or rushed at all. It's perfectly reasonable. When they first meet, there's some obvious sexual tension between them because come on, look at them. However, I don't think that Bruce ended the movie loving her. He just cares for her well-being because he knows that at her core, Selina is and wants to be a good person, which is why I believe Selina fell for him so quickly. Not only did Batman basically save her life from imprisonment and death, but he also believed the goodness in her. Selina said it herself, both she and Bruce look at the worst in everyone except for her, and Selina recognized that. Even though Selina came from one of Gotham's most corrupt families and evidently has a criminal past, Batman of all people still trusted and truly believed in the goodness in her. It's apparent why she couldn't help but fall in love with him, even if Bruce might not feel the same way. Plus, their dynamic in general fell straight out of the animated shows and movies, mainly due to Zoe Kravitz's performance as Selina Kyle. From her emotion to her dialogue to her seductive voice and even her posture and walk alone, Zoe Kravitz just flawlessly portrayed Selina Kyle in every single aspect. Like legit, I say this for very few comic book performances, but Zoe Kravitz was born to play Catwoman. Additionally, I appreciated the fact that Catwoman wasn't an antagonist like in Byrne's sequel, nor clearly a hero. She was instead an anti-hero, which she should be. And she also has a good predominantly leg-using fighting style that doesn't feel overdone like when Anne Hathaway would be in The Dark Knight Rises. Plus, it was cool to see her signature whip make a return to the big screen. Also making a return to the big screen finally is the Riddler, though this time in a much darker performance than Jim Carrey's. From the get-go, I love Paul Dano's version of the Riddler, not just because of his dark amusing riddles, but because immediately we were put into this point of view, and due to his creepy stalking and loud hard breathing, he made me feel very uneasy, which was just enhanced even more due to his unexpected yelling and raise of voice as he murders or talks. It reminded me a lot of the unnerved and psychotic Billy from the iconic 1974 Black Christmas.
It's me, Billy. It's
Besides, it isn't just Paul Dano's performance that made him a great antagonist, it's also a matter of the modern creativity that the film had for a frankly wacky villain. The addition of Saw-like traps and torture machines are the perfect concept for a modern Riddler. In the Saw franchise, people had to put their wills to live to the test so they could survive, while in here, the Riddler puts people in torture machines or traps that put their ethics to the test. Plus, not everyone is put into a trap, so he's not a complete Jigsaw ripoff. He's just a great, dark, riddle-giving combination of Jigsaw and the Zodiac Killer that still feels unique and a working fresh take on the Riddler. Like, Paul Dano as the Riddler is absolutely terrifying. He's just so unhinged and malicious towards Gotham that it legitimately managed to the first time make me scared of the Riddler. Like, even in his monologues and videos, he goes from creepily calm to psychotically pissed in an instant. That just makes you feel so disturbed. Not to mention the fact that this is the most brutal and deranged interpretation of the Riddler I've ever seen. I also like the parallels he has with Bruce, from the way the Riddler watches his crime from afar, like when Bruce investigates, to the ironic creations of each other through some amazing character growth and storytelling. In the ending of the film, as the Riddler's destructive plan floods Gotham City, he tells Batman that he's the reason that he had the balls to do everything he did, meaning that Batman unintentionally created the Riddler, and whether it was on purpose or not, the Riddler also managed to help the people of Gotham believe in the Batman. He made him no longer just this creepy vigilante, but instead Gotham City's protector, which is one of my favorite things about this film, the character journey that this early Batman goes through. Because in the majority of the Batman films, we either follow Bruce as he becomes Batman, or Batman just has to deal with the new criminal who plans to terrorize Gotham. And yes, that is basically what he's trying to do with the Riddler's plan, but he also begins to realize how helpful and hopeful Batman could truly be. At the start of the film, all Bruce cares about is being Batman, and stopping criminals while making them terrified of him. He doesn't exactly care about his family's legacy or his responsibilities as Bruce Wayne, but the more he learns about the truth behind his family's past and what they could have done for the underprivileged people of Gotham, he begins to realize that to truly save Gotham, he can't just be a crime-stopping vigilante whose main goal is to scare crime off the streets. He needs to be a symbol of hope that stops crime to protect the innocence of Gotham. He realizes that the Bat Signal and the Batman in general needs to not only be a warning for criminals, but a symbol of hope for Gotham. He has to stop being the vengeful vigilante and instead become the heroic Dark Knight, which I personally found to be one of the most epic endings for a film. Like, this movie has so much great storytelling that's even in so much of its lighting and overall cinematography. There's so many beautifully lit and framed shots that all feel very immersive to the story or feeling that Matt Reeves is trying to set or explain. One of the biggest themes I interpreted in this movie is the theme of vice versus virtue. The blue light symbolizing vice and the red light symbolizing virtue. The two most memorable scenes of color being used for storytelling were in the Riddler's 3 riddle hostage challenge and when Batman fell into the water after being electrocuted. During the Riddler's challenge, I interpreted that the light kept switching from red to blue to signify the ethical battle that the DA was facing. To either live by being honorable and telling the truth, or die for being corrupt and taking that secret to the grave. Of course, he ended up choosing to stay corrupt, so before the explosion, the last thing we saw was the blue vice symbolizing light on the neck bomb. Then, when Batman gets electrocuted and falls into the water, we once again see the constant flashing of blue and red lights. This time I analyzed it as a symbolization that we don't know if he was killed or not. We don't know if the vice criminals managed to get Batman killed, or if our virtuous hero managed to survive. So, when he gets up alive, he takes out his flare and turns it on, once again bringing back the red lighting as Batman begins to help out the remaining survivors and lead them all to safety. Like, the shots and cinematography in this movie is just so phenomenal. So many shots legit gave me chills, and there are so many of them that are equally as remarkable and beautiful, which is pretty crazy considering how dark this movie can be visibly and tonally, mainly due to this noir horror feel, which I thoroughly enjoyed. This movie embraces the fear that Batman spawns into criminals, even making you feel scared of him and the Riddler. They even add horror elements into the movie. There's Black Christmas like loud breathing of the killer's POV, Batman emerging from the darkness like Michael Myers, unnecessary fear of vacant dark corners, silently standing still to appear behind someone, Saw-like traps, loud noises for jump scare attempts, etc. I don't know, man, I just love the many horror elements that this film brings into the worst looking and most accurate Gotham to appear in any live action movie. As for the side characters, I think that Andy Serkis' Alfred is really good. Not Michael Caine good, but good. John Turturro as Carmine Falcone was decent and believable as a crime boss, but nothing special. The same goes for Jeffrey Wright as Jim Gordon, and Colin Farrell's performance as the Penguin is terrific. He doesn't have that grimy London type of voice, but he does have a fitting Brooklyn mob boss type of voice, which is different from the usual Penguin voices, but still works perfectly for the character.
Whoa, take it easy, sweetheart.
He even has his mannerisms on point. The Penguin in this movie is such an amusing and short-tempered dickhead who isn't scared of Batman but doesn't acknowledge the fact that he's this berserkish guy who could definitely beat his ass. That's why he acts like such a smartass towards him, which makes for some absolutely humorous dialogue scenes between them. This film has some great cinematography, writing, casting, and even sound design and score. The sound design itself is incredible because it really makes you feel like you're actually there, especially in the realistically chaotic car chase sequence, and the score is phenomenal. It has tracks that give intensity, hype, horror-like fear, and some absolutely perfect character themes, which I won't fully go in depth about it because it probably won't make any sense without listening to it as well. So I'll link the tracks in the description and another link to my written Letterbox review of this film. so that if you care that much about my opinion on the character themes, you can read it and listen to them at the same time. Lastly, I just want to say that whether it be to Penguin's smartass lines to Batman, or Gordon's reactions to certain situations, for a very serious Batman and overall film, there's some pretty good humor. And I don't have much of an opinion for Barry Keoghan as the Joker, since we didn't see much of him, but from his voice and his laugh, personally, I'm super excited for the future of this universe. The only issues that I have with this film were Robert Pattinson's sad emotional acting, and the fact that the entire police force completely forgot that Batman assaulted 2 officers and threatened a few more in front of everyone. I found this movie to be a phenomenal film, let alone a comic book film or a Batman film. This movie was a cinematically beautiful, tonally dark, greatly casted, brilliantly written, and an epically choreographed Batman film that without a second thought earns a 10 out of 10, with recommendation to watch if you enjoyed movies like Zodiac, Prisoners, or obviously The Dark Knight. Thank you for watching this Ramos review on Matt Reeves' The Batman. If you want me to review a movie, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you want to see my ratings or rankings on many other films, then go ahead and check out my Letterbox account in the description down below. I'll be rating and possibly even shortly reviewing every single film I watch from here on out. So if you enjoyed this review, please leave a like and subscribe. It'll help a lot and I'll thoroughly appreciate it. Anyways, I'll talk to you in my next review.